Today we're going to be using these beautiful oil pastels to do an image transfer. Sadly, all these gorgeous colors are not going to matter because we're not going to use them directly on the plate. I would personally not risk damaging my plate using something oil-based. This works somewhat like the image transfer you would do using laser printers. The concept is the same. The toner ink resists the paint and so do the oil pastels. What this means is that when you use the drawing we just made to pick up a print, the paint will not get picked up wherever you have the pastels on the paper. This is provided you do this correctly. It is the exact same process you would use with laser prints. The same rules apply, so this should be an easy way to practice for both. I know a lot of people struggle with getting image transfers, and when you watch these tutorials, they make it look so easy that you think you must be the one who just can't figure it out. It takes practice to get it right. Hence, why I'm leaving in all my mistakes and failed attempts until we get to the ones that I'm really happy with. I want you to see that it is okay to struggle, it is okay to fail, and it is okay to keep at it. You will eventually get it right. You can see blue paint beading up on the gel plate. This is what sometimes happens on a new plate. In this case, it is happening because I just conditioned one of my plates with baby oil and used the brayer to spread the oil. And then I used the same brayer on this plate. The leftover oil on the brayer carried over to this plate, which is why the paint is now beading up. Ouch. But not to worry, I added another layer of paint. This will affect the image transfer, but let's still see how it goes. As you can see, our marks are very light. Let's still put some paint on it and see if we can get some of the design. Mistake number 1 here was obviously the paint layer, and mistake number 2, can you guess? I drew with a very light hand, and hence there wasn't enough oil pastel on the paper to create a good enough resist. This is why a lot of time for laser print image transfers, you are asked to print at the highest settings and sometimes even print double to get the maximum amount of toner on the paper. The more material there is, the better it will resist the paint. Let's put it aside to dry while we work on print number 2. This time, I'm deliberately going over the marks twice and really putting pressure while drawing the image. While an image transfer using a laser printer is about transferring a photo which is likely more realistic, here you have to let your imagination go wild and draw anything you like. This will give you more grungy results once you figure it out. I'm just adding squiggles and numbers as we're still at the experimentation stage. Let's go with a red base this time. Use a very light hand. If you press hard, you pick up all the paint, resist or no resist. This only works if you press the paper very lightly and not for too long. I normally count between 5 to 10. I do lift a corner to see if it is working and press a little bit longer if needed. Oh wow, that has worked. You can see the paint is left behind where oil pastel was on the paper. I touch to make sure it is dry as I do not want to ruin a beautiful transfer. I use a blue color to pick up the paint on the plate. Wait, what? Oh no. I only picked up the top wet layer and none of the dry image transfer. Why, you ask? Because I was impatient. Did you see how I picked it up immediately? I did not wait for it to dry. If you want to pick up all the layers, you need to let the paint dry after you place the paper on the plate. If you pick it up immediately, that is do a wet pull, then it will only pick up the wet paint which it did in this case. Luckily, the transfer is still on the plate. Next, I try to use white paint to pick it up. Can't believe I made the same mistake again, although I waited a bit longer, but not long enough. Turns out you have to wait a lot longer to pick up an image transfer than you would say even a 2 to 3 layer single pull. Yep, the image transfer is still on our plate. This time, I add a layer of green. Check to see how much of the transfer we will get. It isn't so bad, but obviously not the perfect one we got earlier. Let's leave this aside and let it sit for a while. In the meanwhile, let's see what became of our first print, the very light spirals. Not as bad as I expected, you can see some of the design. Let's check out a second design that we failed to pick up twice. Ironic. But let's see how this one has fared. Not a perfect transfer as we picked up bits and pieces in the first two tries, but I still love it. It has a grungy look, but also a bit of watercolor paint feel to it. I definitely like it. After this, I worked on two more designs before I got to the place where I was happy with the results I was getting. I'm going to skip parts of this and just show you the final prints as I'm pulling them up. They kept getting better, but still not at a place where I could say, yes, I finally figured it out. Also, since these were mainly squiggles, it was a bit hard to tell if all the design was there or not. Hence, why I decided to change my strategy. This is the point at which everything finally clicked. I decided to go for actual words versus squiggles. This way, I would get a better idea of how the image transferred. I also made sure to go over some of the words or press down when writing, so I get the most amount of pastel on the paper. The more material, the better the resist. Next, a layer of paint. I went for a thin layer of paint. As you can see, I am removing the extra paint using the brayer. Why do we do that, you ask? Remember, we can only put a paper for mere seconds on the plate before we have to pull it. If we wait too long, all the paint will get pulled up. For the resist to work, we have to work fast. However, that means we will not pull up all the paint from the plate if there's too much paint on it. Some will get left behind, and not just in the resist area but also in the background. This is why a lot of times you don't get perfectly clean image transfers. And another lesson that we learned with image transfers, you have to wait a little bit longer than you would with any other layer print to make sure you're not leaving anything behind and you get your design picked up. And look how well this worked out. Definitely one of the cleanest prints we've gotten so far. So these are the four prints we have managed so far. But I wanted to make sure I had the technique down and decided to give it one more shot to make sure I got similar results. This time I decided to use my bigger 8x10 Gelli Art plate, so I had just reconditioned it with baby oil. Just look at the print I pulled and how sharp the edges are, and it even left room for a second print. So I figured this was a good time to try the image transfer. I went with the same formula of mainly using words so it would be easier to see any issues with missing design. Sorry for part of it being off camera. So some of the background did get left behind in the corners. That was likely either due to too much paint in those areas or maybe it was me just being overcautious and not pressing down at all towards the corner area. Let's pick this one up using buff titanium and some white for extra contrast. Let's turn it around to see what we will be getting. Whoa, even though it did not clean up properly, that extra paint is really adding to the oomph factor and the grunge. These two are definitely my most favorite prints from today's session. But do you realize the potential of this? You can literally draw anything you want and have it transferred to your plate. And it is the easiest way to get a chalky, grungy look to your prints. Best of luck experimenting, and I would love to know how it went for you. Feel free to comment below and let me know. And see you in the next video. And as always, if you're not subscribed to the channel yet, please do subscribe and turn on all notifications so you don't miss out any of the upcoming videos.